Okay, we're going to start now with the second lesson, and the second actually says 3 proverbs, but it has to do with the importance of the particularly this area of the board. And the proverb, the first proverb basically is that the 5 point is the most important point, and that's this point. And it's really key to get that point. It's an inner board point, so that if your opponent is a bar, it's a blocking point, preventing him coming in. It's part of a potential prime from here. You start with 2 points, so you've got a piece of a prime. The bar point is important because it makes a prime, but you really want to extend the prime forward here, the 5 point and the 4 point. And usually you're going to do that with some of the checkers stacked on the 6 point, and we'll see later on that one of the proverbs is you need to unstack your heavy points being the 6 point and the 5 point. So let's introduce the proverbs. It's a multi-point proverb, I guess. And the first part is the 5 point is the most important part. If you can make the 5 point, most of the time you're really going to do it. And we saw from the last example that the only time that you don't hit in the outfield is when you have a 3-1, and you're going to make the 5 point rather than hitting the point on the bar with this checker from the 8. And part of the reason for that is that the 5 point is so important. Another kind of rule that doesn't really play so much into the opening, but is that if you're not going to if you have the opportunity to make your 5 point and you're not going to make it, you better do it. You got to be able to do at least 2 other very good things. So if you do at least 2 good things instead of making the 5 point, then you can go ahead and do it. So now there's a couple of corollaries to the 5 point that is helpful to understand. And first of all, the 5 point is 4, but there are 2 5 points. There's your 5 point, and then there's your opponent's 5 point. Both of them are very strong. And in general, you're generally going to want to make, other things being equal, you're going to make your own 5 point versus the defensive 5 point. Secondly, in this area, 5 point is the most important point, but there are other strong points too. The 4 point is the second strongest, followed by the bar point. Now, for many years, it was believed that the bar point was the most valuable point because it starts this prime and it blocks the bone spec checkers from hopping out with a 6. But subsequent analysis from XG and other programs has shown that it's really it's the 5 point that's by far the most important, and then it's the 4, and then it's the bar point that are most important to get. And the reason is that the 5 and the 4 are inner board points, and if you hit your opponent, they can block them from coming in, and that can be extremely valuable. Now, what happens if you can make one or the other, the 5, your own 5 or your opponent's 5? In general, other things being equal, and generally they're not equal, but other things being equal, you're going to want to make your offensive point first. So you'll make your offensive 5 over the defensive 5, your offensive 4 over the defensive 4, offensive bar over the defensive bar, and so on. And generally, you'll make the defensive 4 over the offensive bar in most cases. Again, other things being equal, we'll look at some examples later on where they're not equal and sort of have to make a judgment. And the third part of this is that these are such good points that you're going to want to fight for them. Now, what does that mean? Well, fight for them means that you're going to hit loose, which means that you're going to take, for instance, if you had a 1 and your opponent was here, you would take the 1 off the 6 point and hit him loose, even though you can't cover it. And even though it puts him on the bar where he can come in with the 5 to hit you. And if he's got another checker on the bar on the 8 point, say, he come in with some number other than a 5 and then hit you with 4. And there are a lot of return shots that way, but the value of getting that 5 point is such that it's worth taking the risk. And part of it too is not only it's worth taking the risk to get the 5 point, but to make sure that your opponent doesn't get the 5 point. Why is that so important? Well, uh, one of the strategies, effective strategies, is to prime. And you want to start a prime generally. You have the 8-point and the 6 starters, so you want to get a prime. You can do it with the 9, the 7 or the bar, the 5 or the 4. The 5 or the 4 are stronger. If your opponent makes a 5-point, you can't do that. And so that game, that priming game is basically no longer an option available to you. Okay, so let's look at some examples. We have a 6-1 to play. What's the right play? Well, there are two that you could look at. You could make the bar point, or you could make the 5-point. Which one do you make? Well, if you look at if you call the priorities, it's the 5 is most, then the 4, and then the bar. So this shouldn't be really very close. You should be making 5-point. And as you can see, making the 5-point is the correct play, and making the bar point in this example is a blunder. Okay, let's look at 4. Okay, now we have another 6-1. We've already seen that it was making a blunder. It was a blunder to make the bar point here, but now we can come up and cover that point. And so, do we want to do that? Well, by the what I call the points priority that we went over, this is the most important point. You can make it over this point. So just on that alone, we would make that point. Now, I also said that if you have a chance to make the 5-point and you don't, you should be able to do you have to be able to do at least 2 good things to make up for it. Well, here, this is certainly a good thing, making this point, and because you're likely to get hit there at some point if you don't. But is it enough? And the answer is no. Making this point is still by far the superior play. Making that point is better than making the defensive bar here. Is better than making the offensive bar, mainly because there's already a blot there, and we risk getting hit if we don't make it. But it's still by far inferior to making the 5-point. Let's look at another example. Let me just check something a second. Good. 4-1. Now we have the option of we can make the defensive 5-point here with 4 and the 1. We actually could hit here in the inner board, or we could make the bar point here. So what do? All have something to be said for them. But if you recall, the proverb here is the 5-point is the most important point. Here we can make the defensive 5-point. The order of value of the points is 5, 4, bar. Now we're talking about the defensive bar. So is the defensive 5-point better than the bar offensive bar point? Yeah, of course it is. And so this is the right play, and this is not quite a blunder, but it's certainly a big error if you make that over the defensive bar point, over the defensive 5-point. Okay. Another example of this. Okay. Now, there are a number of good plays we can do here. We can make the defensive 5-point again. Very strong play. We can make the offensive 4-point. Also a very strong play. We could also come down and make the 9-point, which is also a strong play. We haven't talked about the 9-point. It's not one of the key points, but it's a good point to have. So what do? Well, if you go back to our Proverbs, it's 5-4 bar. Those are the important points. And you want to make the offensive over the defensive. So our choice here is making the defensive 5-point or the offensive 4-point. Based on that rule, we're going to want to do the defensive 4-point. And look, it's already sort of here. This is the best play. And this isn't a bad play either. It's not that far off, but the defensive 5 is here. Okay. One more example, and then we'll go. This 2-1. Okay, what do we do here? Well, this isn't about the points of priority. We can't make any points with the 2-1. But there is a proverb related to this, which is fight for a good point. And so what we're going to do with 1 is hit. We want this point when we don't want him to get it. We don't want our opponent to get it. So we're going to hit him so he doesn't get it. And then we slotted a point. Now what do you do with the 2? Well, we could move it back 2. That would be fine. But we're probably going to want to move it up this to up here so we have an extra cover once we've hit our opponent. And yeah, this is by far the better play. We get the cover. We'll also see, I mentioned earlier, that unstacking these heavy points is important too. And doing with the 2-1, we hit, fighting for a good point, unstack a heavy point, and now we've got another cover to make this point to make our 5-1. All right, so let's go to the quiz part, and now we have a think about. And the second part has a number of components that we want to consider, which is the 5-point is the most important point. 1, there's an order of priority to the important point. There are important points in this order of priority, which is 5-point over the 4-point over the bar. And then we want to fight for the point. So take a look at this one. Which is the proverb that matters here, and what's the right play? So I'll pause the recording if you think about it, and then turn back when we're ready. Okay, so we can't make a point. We can't hit in the outfield or in a board. So what do? Well, our opponent has crept up to a good point. We can prevent him from making that point. And we can fight for that point. So the proverb here is, let's fight for a good point. So we're going to hit with the 2. What we do with the 1, we could move it up to the 3, but now we're putting it at a point that we don't really want, and we're just as likely, almost just as likely to get hit there as here, as from the 4-point. So we're going to split the back checkers. There's value splitting the back checkers. And we say here's the play. And the option of hitting and going forward is just not as good. Anything that doesn't hit is, I guess these aren't blunders, but they're big enough errors. Okay. Quiz question 2. 6-3 to play. So stop the recording. Let's again. It's important to have the proverbs in your mind. So it's not just to get the right play; it's to understand what the proverb is, so that this helps you remember it, and then you can. You have to remember it first before we can sort it out. When later on we have different alternatives. You got to know it first, and then learn the priorities of it. Okay, so turn the recording off, figure out what it is, and you need to state the proverb. Okay, so what do we have here? 6-3. Well, what can we do? Well, we can make this bar point, which would be good. We could hit from here. Hitting is usually good, although, as I said, probably we're not going to want to do that because hitting a deep point is not usually a good idea. We could make the 5 point. So this should be very easy. It's, make the 5 point. Not making the bar point, which is still a good point, is a blunder here. Because the 5 point is very strong. We want to make it if we can. And so we do. Okay. Next one. Okay, here's a tricky one. What do we do with the 4-2? Well, let's see. We can make the bar point with the 4. Coming back here with the 6. Or we could make the 5 point. What's the best answer? Well, we've got a couple of things. First of all, we're not fighting for the inner board point, so that's not it. But then, do you make the 5 or the bar? Well, certainly the 5 point is the better point. You know the priorities. So that should be the play, which it is. Even though this is not a bad play, look at this one, because this one gives you an anchor here and an anchor here. The double anchor is a fairly strong position to have. You can play something called a back game with that, but it's not really what we want here. This is way too early to play a back game, and it's beyond really this lesson. So stick with the more simplistic. Make the 5 point if you can. It's better than making the bar point, and it's really as simple as that. Make the better point. Okay. Next one. All right. Here's a common situation that occurs that beginners don't understand very well and don't do. So take a look at this one. What's the right proverb that applies here? And let's come up with the answer. Again, you need to know the proverb, and even if you come up with the right answer, it's better. You need to understand why. Okay, so what's the answer here? Well, we can't make a point, and we can't hit in the outfield anywhere. So we only have one proverb left, which is fight for the good point. What's that? Well, the 4 point. We can lose here. And then split the back checker. And that's the right thing to do. It puts your opponent on the bar. It only sets them back 4 pips, but 4 pips is 4 pips. We might get hit back, but it's our opponent for making the 4 point, and maybe he'll dance, maybe you won't hit us. It's worth the risk of doing that. Again, we could hit and run, but we might as well split. Splitting is very useful and desirable. The alternative is to move up 2, and that's by far weaker play. Okay. Next question. All right, what do we do here? Double 2s. We can't hit. I guess we could hit off here. So what's our priority? We can't hit. The proverb doesn't apply. The 5 point is most important, and fight for a good point. We're not fighting here because we're not hitting anybody, but so we know that the 5 point is most important, and we have a priority. So your thinking should be, okay, I can make the 5 point. Let's make the 5 point. So 7 to 5 with 2. Then I've got 2 4 play, well, I can make the 4 point. That's also a strong point. 6 to 4 with 2. Yeah. And that's really all there is to it. Make those strong points. That's what you want. Okay. Let's do the last one for this session. 2-1. Here's another one that beginners certainly have difficulty with understanding why you do this. So take a look at it again, go through the Proverbs, there aren't that many, and decide what to do. Okay, so hopefully you've seen that the important proverb here is fight for a good point. So you're going to want to come in with 2. You have 5. You've hit off this point or that point a couple times, and you sent the checkers back, but you're still going to hit off that point. It's still the right move to make, and it has to disrupt you. To improve his own board or to block you in any meaningful way. So the risk of getting hit back, and another matter is you already have 5 back. If you get one more, it doesn't make it that much. It doesn't really hurt you at this point. And in fact, it makes your opponent gives your opponent some difficulty in trying to bring in checkers around and burying in. So, but the proverb is fight for the good point, and that's true even when you have hardly any checkers left to fight with. And again, that's all there is to it. Remember, fight for the good point, and you'll get the right play. Okay, so that's the end of lesson 2. We've gone over one simple proverb, which is hit, which again applies to 3/4 of the board, almost 3/4. And now we've got a rule of the 5 point is the most important point, followed by 4, and then the bar, and then fight for the important points. And that's for this lesson.